Assalamu alaikum. We have talked a lot about public key, private key, etc. You must be wondering how a public key or a private key look like. So first of all, today I want to show you a simple PGP public key, as you can see on the screen before you. So you can notice that there is a strange set or combination of characters before you. Begin PGP public key block version PGP 6.5.8, and then you can notice M O G I B D Q X N J W R B and so on. And then at the bottom you can notice and PGP public key block. That was a simple PGP public key, and with the help of this public key we can encrypt a message, and then using the corresponding private key the receiver can decrypt the message which was encrypted with the help of this public key of a receiver. So that was about the public key, how it looks like. If you recall, we were discussing the electronic payment systems, and we had in fact started the virtual PIN payment system, which is a credit card based payment system. And I told you that in virtual PIN payment system there is no use of encryption. It's a very simple payment mechanism that can be used for payment online. And what basically happens is that a virtual PIN is assigned to a customer by a company called First Virtual Holding. When the customer supplies his information, his identification details, etc., he gets a virtual PIN. After that, the customer makes a telephone call to the First Virtual and provides the credit card number through the telephone call to the First Virtual. And resultantly, the First Virtual establishes a link between the customer's virtual PIN and his credit card number. So the main point you should register is that the credit card number, which is a very sensitive financial information, that is not put on the internet, rather that is provided through the telephone call, the telephone being a safer mechanism of communication. And how the transaction is carried through, I had shown you a slide. We can look at that slide once again. So there are three parties, three participants in this payment mechanism. At the bottom you can notice there is the buyer, the customer, and then there is a web server, and there is a merchant who is selling his goods through that web server. And then you can notice on the top right there is the First Virtual Internet Payment System server, or simply you can call the First Virtual server. The First Virtual server, which is established by the company First Virtual Holding, that plays the role of a backbone in this particular transaction. So first of all, when the buyer selects the items he wants to buy from the online shop of the merchant, the buyer is asked to provide his account ID or his virtual PIN. So there may be a web form wherein the buyer should type his virtual PIN and then information number 1 to the web server. In step number 2, the web server passes on this information to First Virtual server to check the of this account ID or this virtual PIN, whether this virtual PIN is valid or not. The First Virtual would look into its database to see whether this account ID is okay or not. If it is okay, if it is valid, it has not been blacklisted, it has not been stolen by somebody, then the OK message is delivered in step number 3 to the web server. In step number 4, on receiving this account OK information, the web server sends the goods. In this particular example, the information goods, say an online journal, an online article, etc. So in step number 4, the information goods are supplied by the web server to the buyer, and simultaneously in step number 5, the details about this transaction, they are also forwarded to the first virtual. The web server tells that, well, I have delivered the goods, so please arrange the payment for me. In step number 6, which is a very important step, an email is sent by the first virtual to the buyer. There is in fact a question in this email posed to the buyer that whether you are satisfied with the goods delivered. There are 3 possible answers to this question. One is, yes, I have got the goods and I accept these goods, so please proceed with the payment. This is the first possible answer. The second answer can be that, no, don't proceed with the payment. Either the goods have not been delivered to me as yet, or they were delivered but they were of poor quality. I do not accept them. So in that eventuality, no payment would be arranged by first virtual to the merchant. The third possible answer is a fraud indication, in which the buyer can indicate that the buyer had not at all placed any order for these goods to the merchant. So there is a possibility that somebody might have stolen the virtual PIN of the buyer and placed a fraudulent order in the name of the buyer. In that case also, then no payment is proceeded by the first virtual in favor of the merchant. So these are the steps which are carried out in order to conclude a transaction through the virtual PIN payment system. I told you that there is a concept, automated clearing house. I told you that banks, they are electronically linked with each other through a centralized system, and that is called the automated clearing house. If the first virtual has to make the payment in the account of the merchant, then the first virtual would make use of this automated clearing house. The FV would be then linked with the bank of the merchant, the acquirer bank, where the account of the merchant is held, and then using ACH, the first virtual would transfer the payment received from the bank which has issued the credit card to a particular buyer. So from the bank which has issued the credit card to the buyer, from that bank, from the account of the buyer, the credit card account of the buyer in that bank, the payment would then be transferred to the acquirer bank in the account of the merchant. So in this fashion, the first virtual, it plays the backbone role, the key role in the transfer of the payment. The security issues which are involved in this payment system, if you remember, I told you that basically there are 2 security threats. One is that somebody might steal your virtual PIN, which you had earlier validly obtained from the first virtual, and then using your virtual PIN, some bogus transactions can be carried out by the attacker, by the fraudulent person. And if you do not report this fact that your virtual PIN has been stolen, and the fact that your virtual PIN is therefore not blacklisted as yet by the first virtual, then all these bogus transactions can be carried out till the time that the report of blacklisting is there with the first virtual. Normally, by policy, a waiting period is prescribed for providing the response to the step number 6 email, the email regarding the satisfaction. So there can be a few minutes or there can be a few days which are prescribed for the buyer to respond to that step number 6 email. The buyer respond within that stipulated time period, then the payment is arranged by the virtual. So there is also likelihood that a hacker in fact hacks your email account so that you are unable to receive the step number 6 email, and therefore you are not able to respond to that email. If that happens again, then the bogus transactions, they can be carried out and they can play havoc for you. The second security threat is even more severe, as I had earlier also indicated, that your credit card number can be stolen, and then using your particulars, an attacker can create a virtual PIN. He can establish an email account also, and then he can carry out the bogus transactions, and we will get to know about when your credit card is built in the end. So that is also a form of security threat that can be associated with this payment mechanism. Normally, the first virtual, it keeps accumulating different payment requests for a period of 3 months or 90 days. And at the end of 90 days, then the credit card is billed by the first virtual. Right? So after the 90 days, all different payment requests, they would be gathered, and then first virtual would arrange the payment from the credit card bank to the acquirer bank, the bank of the merchant, using the ACH. Since the first virtual does the accounting for the buyer, for the merchant, it plays a very important role in this mechanism. So it also deducts its transaction fee or its commission for this service. So before the payment is actually deposited in the account of the merchant, the first virtual would deduct its own commission before that. It may range from 2, 3, 4%. So that was the concept, how the first virtual, it makes its revenue, it makes its profit. Now, just to sum up, what are the different advantages and disadvantages of this payment system? Okay, first of the most important advantages is that no encryption is used. So therefore, it is a very simple payment mechanism which can be applied, and there is no special software is required also, no special hardware is required on either the client side, the customer side, or the merchant side. The transaction, in other words, is quite simple to carry out. Then I also told you that this system is more suitable for low value information goods, which means that in case you want to buy an article online, or you want to buy an online magazine, or you want to purchase an online song, online music, so, and if the value of such items is not that much, say it is within the range of $30, $40, $50, etc., then you can use this system quite effectively for payment purposes. Okay. In case the payment is not arranged to the merchant, because you have noticed that the merchant delivers the goods first and then he receives the payment later. So merchant is less secured here. So in case the merchant does not receive the payment, only the sales are lost. So the merchant is not exposed to that degree of financial or physical loss as would have been in case the merchant had to physically deliver some items, some goods, right? What has happened is that in case the payment is not effectuated in favor of the merchant has only lost certain sales. At the most, certain copies of his online article have been sold for free. So there is not actual physical loss to the merchant in this eventuality. We can say just the sales are lost, just a few extra copies in terms of these information goods, they have been free of cost delivered. No actual physical loss has occasioned to the merchant. right? And plus the fact that these information goods, they are normally of low value, so the merchant is therefore safeguarded. A balance is tried to be therefore created to overcome the problem that the merchant is less secured by nature in this payment mechanism. Then disadvantages of this payment system: one is that both the buyer and the merchant, they ought to be registered with the first virtual holdings, otherwise this payment cannot be carried through. The buyer must have a credit card in his name through which the payment would ultimately be made, and then the merchant, he must have an account with a bank, the acquirer bank. Without that, the FV would not be able to deposit the money in favor of the merchant. Another disadvantage is that, as I mentioned, merchant is less secured, and in order to balance it out, then we normally apply this payment system for low value information goods only. And then the last thing about this payment system is that it gradually lost popularity. So by 1998, we can say that this system, it declined in its popularity. And one of the main reasons for that was that we see a lot of surge, a lot of development in the cryptography. We have seen some very useful cryptographic algorithms coming into existence after 1998, and then we can see a lot of use of cryptography, and the payment mechanisms which were conceived after that, they, in one way or the other, they applied the digital signature technology, the public, the private keys, etc., as you are familiar with. Okay, then I would also like to talk about another very important payment mechanism that is in vogue these days for payment through the internet, and that is termed as centralized account payment system. The key feature about this payment mechanism is that there is an online financial institution or an online bank, and both the buyer and the merchant, they are registered with this online financial institution. They have their accounts, their actual accounts with this online financial institution, and then the payment is transferred from the account of the buyer to the account of the merchant whenever the buyer wants to make the payment to the merchant with the help of this online financial institution. So there are three main parties: the buyer, the merchant, and the online financial institution in this payment model. About more than 20 different businesses, they are using this approach, and they have given different names to this approach. So you may find that on certain websites, this concept, this approach is dubbed as e-gold payment system. Somewhere it is Yahoo Pay Direct payment system. The concept, the philosophy is the same, and the different payment systems, they are using this approach in a different fashion. So on the screen you can see I have listed a few important payment systems which are using this concept. So PayPal is one such payment system, then eGold, BillPoint, CyberGold, Yahoo Pay Direct, Amazon.com payments, etc. So there is a long list. In fact, I have just given you a brief idea about the systems that are using this approach. Okay, the payment mechanism that revolves around this system, as I mentioned, it requires that both the buyer and the merchant, they must have an account with the online financial institution. And in order to open or fund or maintain your account with the online bank or online financial institution, you can make use of the credit cards. So with the help of the credit card, you can open your account, you can maintain or fund your account with the online financial institution. There is another very popular way of funding or opening your account, and that is with the help of prepaid cards. So that is quite a useful idea. So what happens is that you go to a physical shopping store and say if you want to buy $100 e-gold card, you make the $100 payment to the store, and as a result you get a $100 e-gold card for that matter. Then you scratch that card, you view some code, some PIN, and you enter that PIN on a web form on the internet, and through that you actually add $100 in your account lying with the online financial institution. So in this way you open your account with the help of prepaid cards. Okay, for the payment to get effectuated, in fact, the buyer has to provide certain information to the online bank, and there are 4 different pieces of information which are actually required for the online bank to process the transaction. One is that the buyer should specify the account identifier of the buyer, number 1. So therefore the account identifier of the buyer, that should be provided. Number 2, the password of the buyer. Number 3, the account identifier or the account ID of the merchant or the payee to whom the payment is to be made. And number 4, the amount, the actual money, the amount that has to be transferred in favor of the payee or the merchant. So this information, these 4 things, they are provided, they are supplied to the online bank, and there is a protocol, Secure Socket Layer, SSL. Normally SSL is used to encrypt this piece of information when this information is to be supplied or passed over to the online bank. We'll have a detailed study about SSL, how it operates, but for the time being I would just like to mention that SSL is a protocol that was developed by Netscape Communications, and it is very simple to apply, and with the help of SSL one can encrypt certain information that is to be delivered, that is to be passed over the internet. So you enable the SSL on your system, and there is a possibility that all the information, the exchange of information over the internet then between the client and the server, that would be then automatically encrypted. So this information is provided in an encrypted format through SSL. Then there is a notification by the online bank to the payee or the merchant that, well, there is certain amount of payment that is to be deposited in your account. After receiving this notification, the merchant can then over the internet, again with the help of SSL, the merchant can access the online bank and view his account details and to verify that whether the payment that was actually deposited in his account or not. So now with this brief idea, the background, I would like to show you the slide. You can see on the screen there are 3 entities. User A, the payer who has to make the payment, say a client, a customer, and then on the right side user B, payee or the merchant to whom the payment should be made, and at the top there is the centralized account system, that online bank which would carry out this transaction. Step number 1, the payment transfer authorization over SSL. 4 things: the account identifier of the payer, his password, the account identifier of the payee or the merchant, and the amount. This information encrypted with the help of SSL is delivered to the centralized account system. And then in step number 2, the centralized account system sends a notification and email to the payee, informing the payee that certain amount is going to be deposited in his account. In step number 3, the verification can be done about this payment by the payee or the merchant after connecting to the centralized account system. So the web payment verification over SSL, that can be done by the merchant. At the top, I have shown you the account ID. So the account ID is for the payer who I have termed as user A here. So the account ID is user A@domain1.com. This is the account ID or the account identifier of the payer who is user A here. And then the amount which is lying against this account of the payer, that amount I have shown here, say $110. And then the account identifier of the user B who's a payee or a merchant. The account identifier runs as user B@domain2.com, and I have shown here that user B, the payee, has $15 lying in his account. You can notice here that the account identifier or the account ID, in fact, is the email address in relation to both these parties, that is the user A, the payer, and user B, the payee. You can have other account identifier formats also, but normally your email addresses are kept as account identifiers in this payment mechanism. The main point is that your account identifier or your account ID, which relates to the payment in your account with the centralized account system, that account identifier must be unique. I repeat, that account identifier must be unique in the system, and since the email addresses, they are considered to be unique, so normally they are treated as the account identifiers. Okay, then there is another point I think we should register, that in order to receive the payment, it is imperative, it is necessary that the merchant signs up with the online bank. If the merchant is not registered, he does not have the account with the online bank, then the merchant cannot receive the payment in his favor. There are certain payment systems which use this concept, this approach, and these payment systems, they also enable the payer to pose a question to the payee. Wherever the payer who has to make the payment to a particular person, he is not sure of the identity of the payee to whom he wants to make the payment, then certain payment systems allow such a payer to raise a question to the payee, and if the payee provides the answer which the payer believes to be the true answer, the correct answer, then in that eventuality the payer indicates to the online bank to proceed with the payment in favor of the payee, otherwise to stop the payment. So I can give you an example, say where the payer has to make a payment to the payee and he is not sure of the identity of the payee. A question can be posed to the payee. Yahoo Pay Direct, for that matter, that payment system allows the payer to raise questions to judge the identity of the payee. So a question can be raised by the payer that when was Mr. A inducted as a director in your organization? Another type of question can be that when did your organization, your company, sell this much number of shares to Mr. B? Then another question can be, what is the date of birth of your, say, second child? So there are different questions that pair can pose, and the pair already knows the answers of these questions, and the pair believes that the payee only knows the answers of these questions too. So therefore, if the same answers are supplied by the payee to the pair in response to these questions, then the pair would have this comfort about the identity of the payee. The pair would believe that, okay, yes, this is the person whom I want the payment to be made, and then it can ask the online bank to arrange for the payment. Then, since the online bank, it facilitates this transaction, so therefore there is a transaction fee which the online bank charges in this scenario. It depends upon the policy of the online bank. Sometimes the transaction fee is charged only from the merchant, sometimes from both the parties, the payer and the payee, or the customer and the merchant both. The actual transfer of the payment in the account of the merchant again would be done with the help of automated clearing house. That means that the online bank, it would be connected with the acquirer bank, the bank of the merchant, where the merchant has got his account through the automated clearing house, and then the specific amount from the account of the payer, that amount would be transferred in the account of the acquirer bank by the online bank, and then the merchant can physically withdraw this amount whenever he wants to withdraw that, say with the help of ATM or through a simple check. This amount can then physically be withdrawn by the merchant, by the payee. The drawback in this payment system probably is that in order to avail this payment mechanism, both the payer, the payee, the customer and the merchant, they have to be registered with the online bank. They have to be registered in such a way that they have their accounts with the online bank, they have their money lying in those accounts with the online bank. Otherwise, the payment mechanism in favor of the merchant, it cannot work. So that was about the centralized account payment system. I've given you its key features. Again, it's a very popular payment mechanism which is being used by various organizations receiving payments online. Then I would like to discuss with you another important payment model, and that is the electronic checks. There is an organization called Financial Services Technology Consortium that was formed somewhere in 1993, and basically it's a group which comprises certain research agencies, certain banks or financial institutions in the United States, certain government agencies in the United States. So these different organizations, they have created a group called FSPC, and it has launched the idea, the concept of electronic checks, and it is popularly being used for payment purposes. In case of e-check or electronic check, there is a specific instruction to the payer's bank, where the payer has got his account, to make a specific payment to a particular person, to the payee. Right? The verification in this payment mechanism is done with the help of digital certificates. The electronic check system, it uses both the symmetric and asymmetric type of cryptography, and the digital certificates are used in this payment system for the verifications of the digital signatures. The digital certificates are issued in the X509 standard format, which is the standard format for the issuance of digital certificates. The digital certificates are issued by the respective banks of the payer and the payee in this model. So therefore, the payer's bank, where the payer has got his account, the payer's bank would act as a certification authority, issuing a digital certificate to his client, the payer, confirming thus the public key of the payer. Similarly, the payee's bank would also act as certification authority, issuing a digital certificate in favor of the payee and thus authenticating the public key of the payee. Then in this payment mechanism, certain restrictions can also be imposed while issuing the certificate. So therefore, a restriction can be imposed that the maximum check value would be of this particular limit, and it can also be restricted that the check would only be issued in this particular currency. So all such restrictions can also be imposed through these certificates by the certification authorities. Now, in this payment mechanism, there are four parties, four entities, four participants. That is, there is a payer, then the payer's bank, there is a payee at the payee's bank. The payer and the payee, both in normal circumstances, they should have an electronic checkbook device available on their systems. An electronic checkbook device is a combination of a specific hardware and a software, normally a smart card, which is almost the size of a credit card. That device, the smart card, is used as an electronic checkbook device. A smart card has loaded on it a software, a chip, and a smart card therefore can accommodate, it can store in it the certificate of an individual, his digital certificate, the private key of a person, and it also registers the transactions. It can also register what checks have been issued, what checks have been signed. Record of all such issued checks is also maintained in the smart card using the software which is loaded on it. And there are computer machines, computer systems which have this facility. They can hold the smart card. They have the terminals which can accommodate the smart card. Then the transaction itself is not that complicated. What happens is that whenever a payer wants to make certain payment, it inserts its smart card, and then using that smart card it can generate a check. That check can be electronically the amount that you want to pay, the date, and to whom this amount you want to pay. So all this information is filled out, then that check is digitally signed by the payer, and along with this check, the digital certificate which would verify the identification of the payer, that certificate is also coupled, is also attached with the check. And then in a secure envelope, this check is transported, is delivered to the payee. Okay. Now here I have used the term secure envelope. You should understand this concept here. Whenever you encrypt certain information with the help of a symmetric key, and then you encrypt that symmetric key itself with the public key of the receiver, then you can say that you have created a secure envelope. It's a bit complicated. I can give you a common day example. Say there are two boxes. In the first box, there is a key which is contained in that first box, and that key belongs to that second box. So first of all, you open this first box and then you get that key, which is that of the second box. The key belongs to the second box. And then using this key, then you can open the second box. So similarly, in case of a secure envelope, first of all, you encrypt a message with a symmetric key, and then that symmetric key itself is encrypted with the public key of the receiver, so that by using his private key, the receiver can retrieve, the receiver can get the symmetric key, and then using that symmetric key, the receiver can decrypt the information. This concept is called a secure envelope. So in this payment mechanism, the check that you have filled, your digital signatures, you apply your signatures being a pair with the help of your private key, and then your digital certificate. These three things, they are encrypted with the help of a symmetric key, and then that symmetric key would be encrypted with the public key of the payee, the receiver, and then you can say that it has given rise to a secure envelope. So in this secure envelope, in fact, you deliver this check through an email, for that matter, to the payee, to the receiver. The receiver has also got the same facility. He can also apply or use his smart card. The receiver then decrypts this information. He opens this envelope. First, he uses his private key, decrypts the symmetric key. Then using that symmetric key, decrypts the information pertaining to the check. Then the user would endorse. User means here the payee. The payee would then endorse this check, means that he would sign this check further with his private key, the private key of the payee, and attach his digital certificate to verify his endorsement or his digital signatures, and then send it to the payee's bank. Then the payee's bank again would decrypt this secure envelope. All this information was delivered by the payee to the payee's bank through a secure envelope. The payee would decrypt this secure envelope, and then after doing all the verification, the payee's bank would interact with the payer's bank through the automated clearing house, through the ACH, in order to clear this electronic check, and the respective parties, the banks, both the payer's bank and the payee bank, they would report about this transaction through emails to their respective parties, that is the payer and the payee. So now I can show you this model on the slide also, so that would clear the things further in your mind. You can look at the screen. So FSTC electronic check concept, the four entities, the payer, the payee, then payer's bank and the payee's bank. The banks are at the bottom of this diagram shown to you. The payer holds a checkbook device. He has got a secure hardware. The payer can use the smart card, for that matter, and the payer can generate electronic checks. When an invoice, or in other words a bill, is made by the payee to the payer for making certain amount of payment, then the payer can issue a check, and that electronic check that can be then filled out, the amount, the date, etc. All this information in different fields of the check would be filled, Then this check would be digitally signed using the private key of the payer. This check would be signed also by the payer, and then the payer would attach the digital certificate issued by the payer's bank to the payer. That certificate was also stored in the smart card of the payer. So these three things, the check, the signatures, the certificate, all this information is then put in a secure envelope. As I explained you, it means that all this information would first be encrypted with the symmetric key, and then that symmetric key would be encrypted with the payee's public key, and then in this secure envelope through email, this information, this check would be delivered to the payee. The payee would verify the digital signatures looking at the certificate. The signatures of the payer would be verified by the payee. You can see the box between the payee and the payee's bank that contains 5 fields. The bottom 3 fields, check, sign, certificates, that pertains to the payer, the information supplied by the payer. And then the upper 2 fields, the endorsement and certificate, that pertains to the payee. The payee now endorses this electronic check. Endorsement means that the payee, using his private key, would countersign, would endorse this electronic check, and would also attach the certificate that would verify the payee's endorsement or the payee's signature. And then again, the payee would use the secure envelope concept. That means that all this information would be encrypted with the symmetric key, and then the symmetric key would itself be encrypted with the payee's bank's public key, thus creating a secure envelope. This information, this secure envelope would be delivered to the payee's bank. The payee's bank would again do the verification. It would look at the certificate, it would verify the endorsement, it can also verify the signature put by the payer on the electronic check, and after all that verification, the payee's bank would interact with the payer's bank, and through automated clearing house, the centralized system through which the payer bank and payee bank, they are linked with each other, this check would be processed, and the payment then would be transferred from the payer's account in the payer's bank to the payee's account in the payee's bank. In other words, the account of the payee would be credited and the account of the payer would be debited. And the email statement about this transaction would be delivered to the payer, and it can also be delivered to the payee by the payee's bank. So dear students, that was the main discussion about the electronic checks. We can carry this discussion forward in our subsequent lecture, inshallah. But since our lecture is going to be concluded very soon, so let's summarize what we have done in our today's lecture. Basically, we have seen how the centralized account payment system works, and we have also examined as to what are the advantages, disadvantages of virtual PIN payment system, why this virtual PIN payment system is used, and what is the working of that payment mechanism. We have also seen the working of the electronic check, and I told you that it's a very secured payment mechanism which uses both symmetric and asymmetric type of cryptography, and there are 4 parties which are involved: the payer, the payer's bank, the payee, and the payee's bank. And I also mentioned about the concept secure envelope. How do we create secure envelope? Basically, we encrypt some information with a symmetric key, and then we encrypt that symmetric key itself with the public key of the receiver. The reason is that we want to transport, we want to provide this symmetric key to the other side, to the receiver, so that using that symmetric key, the user, the receiver, can decrypt the data. So in order to transport this symmetric key, we have to use the public key of the receiver, so that the receiver can get hold of this symmetric key, and then using that symmetric key he can decrypt certain information. In our coming lecture, we shall also discuss the concept behind electronic cache. Again, electronic cache is a very popular concept, a little bit intricate, but I hope that with the help of few diagrams we shall be able to take a good understanding of that too. So don't be intimidated with that. So with this, let's conclude our lecture. Allah Hafiz.